What's up, YouTube? My name is Arthur Robinson Jr. I am the creator and host of PowerfulInterviews.com. I am a partner of NationalDiversified.com. I want to welcome each and every one of you to this phenomenal video. In this interview, you're going to experience life-changing information that you will not find anywhere else. I have secured an incredible interview with a great friend of mine, successful businessman. He is a multi-millionaire. He is the credit coach. His name is Anthony Gaalaas. Anthony Gaalaas is a professional speaker, and he basically specializes in credit profiles and credit scores. In this interview, you're going to hear exclusively how Anthony Gaalaas, he breaks down layman's terms about the big difference between a credit profile and a credit score. Also in this interview, Anthony Gaalaas, he breaks down layman's terms about your credit score can affect your financial future. Also in this interview, Anthony Gaalaas, he breaks down layman's terms about the three credit bureaus like Expedient, TransUnion, and Equifax. They basically are for-profit companies and much, much more. So remember, this is not BS information. The right information will change your current situation. Wealthy people, they take advice from other wealthy people, and unfortunately, broke people, they take advice from broke people. So right about now, go get your pen and your pad, sit back and relax, and write down some notes in this interview that I'm going to reveal to each and every one of you with my great friend, successful businessman. He is the credit coach expert. His name is Anthony Gaalaas. This interview, it will change your life. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and turn your notifications on. That way you be well informed when I publish more underground audio interviews. So, check it out.
Without further ado, I'd like to welcome the one, the only, the powerful Anthony Gaalaas to the call.
Well, thank you, Arthur. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, I'd like to thank you, Anthony, for taking time out of your busy schedule to educate me and the listeners worldwide about credit scores and credit profiles. I gladly appreciate it.
Anytime. I'm here for you guys and all your listeners.
Now, what I'd like to know, and can you express to my listeners in regards to who is the powerful Anthony Gaalaas? How long have you been in your powerful industry, and what is your expertise? And can you break down the layman's terms so the listeners fully understand how can they get the highest credit score possible and the loans that they deserve?
Yeah, sure can. Well, I'll back up a few years. I'm 45 years old now, so when I was in my early 20s, about 24, I became a financial planner, and it was kind of interesting sitting down with folks that were about my age now and teaching them how to invest and where to put their money and get the best return and the best value for what they were doing, what they were spending, investing. So from there, I got into investing myself quite heavily, and then became a mortgage broker so I could do my own deals instead of the mortgage brokers making all the commissions on my deals. And I was helping a few folks there, and that's when I started to realize exactly how your credit profile and score affects you, and even more so today, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. But with understanding that and realizing that it was affecting a lot of consumers out there in America today, that's when I decided to form this company and really do some heavy research and understand exactly how your score affects your financial future, and that you actually can change that, and you don't have to just put up with whatever the bureaus or the creditors are saying about you. But you can learn how to play the game. And it is that. It's just what I call it, a credit game. You have to learn the rules. Now, when we get into this, the rules don't make sense, but you just have to learn how to play it their way and use it to your advantage and make a lot of money for yourself. So that's how I got started, and over the last 20 years, but over the last 7 years has just been a real focus on, I've done quite well for myself, and now I just want to get that information out there to the public and make it a mission of mine, because the biggest thing is that these people don't want you to get this information because you're taking the wealth out of their hands and putting it into your hands.
Now, that is very powerful, Anthony. Now, can you break down layman's terms so the listeners fully understand? Because I want this information to absorb in their brains.
Right.
what is a credit profile and what is a credit score?
Right. Most of us refer to a credit profile as our credit report. I call it a profile because nowadays it's being used more than just as your credit history to attain loans. But a lot of people don't know this, and I'm going to try and speak slowly because sometimes I can get pretty passionate and talk a little fast, and you just slow me down if we need to. But your credit profile or your credit report is not used just for those loans and applying for credit, but it's also used, believe it or not, nowadays for getting a job. I don't have the exact dates and quotes in front of me, but I know it went from about 25% of employers that were pulling your credit report in 2006, and it went up to in 2008 it went up to about 45%. So it doubled in the amount of employers that actually pull your credit report before hiring you, or maybe even once you're on the job. And there's documents that you might sign in the fine print not even knowing that they have that authority to do that. And we'll get into why they're pulling your credit report later too, but that's one thing. They're pulling your credit report nowadays also for your insurance rates. On your homeowner's insurance, your auto insurance rates, and there's talk in the future, here near future, they're also going to start using your score and your credit report for your health insurance rates. Okay, the health insurance industry has lost a lot of money with people not paying their bills, not having insurance, so they could bill you accordingly to that as well too. So, but your credit profile is basically your track record, your history. It's your report card, as you may say, over the last 7 to 10 years on what you've done with credit, good and bad, okay? So some people might say, oh, well, yeah, I had a collection, 6 years ago, but I paid that. Why is it still on my report? Because it will. It will stay on there. Any negative stuff can stay on for 7 years. Your positive stuff will stay on more than 7 years, thank goodness, so you can show stuff back as far as, 10, 15 years ago. But the negative stuff will show only up to 7 years. In your trade lines, which is your actual accounts, and then in public records, which are such things as bankruptcies, tax liens, judgments, child support, what else? I think that's about it. Anything like that will stay in public records for up to 10 years on your credit report. So that's going to make or break your score, obviously, and on how they score you, on how you've been using credit in the past, any kind of derogatory remarks you've had, such as medical collections, auto late pays, mortgage lates, bankruptcies, tax, all that stuff. And that's how they figure out your score, in addition to, obviously, what positive credit you're using. Because I've found a lot of people today, they kind of got away from credit. They didn't like credit, the high interest rates, things like that. And so what they've done is they say, oh, I pay cash for everything now. I cut up my credit card. And I'm not against some of these folks on television or radios that are talking about people, get out of credit, cut up that credit card if you have to. Now, from a financial standpoint, that's what people have to do sometimes, is just control their spending habits. We live in America, which is kind of a buy now, pay later. It's the fancy television commercials and the radio ads and the all the newspaper ads and catalogs. Drink this beer and you'll get this woman, or put this lipstick on and you'll look like this woman. It's a crazy what advertising has done to us. In the average household used to be about $8,000 in personal debt. I think it's up to about $15,000 in personal debt now per household. So it's I understand, your spending habits need to be curbed and, control your spending habits. But when it comes time to, buy a house, refinance your house, buy a car, even get a job or rent an apartment, anything like that at all where they're going to pull your credit, do a credit check on you, if you're not using credit, that could actually hurt you as well too.
Now, explain to the listeners, Anthony, exactly what is a FICO score, and can you break down in layman's terms what is Expedient, Equifax, and TransUnion, and what place does that take in regards to your credit score?
Right. Well, I'm glad you asked that question because when I get onto this as well too, I really like to bash the three credit bureaus, Equifax, Experian, and TransUnion. People have to understand that these three credit bureaus that score you and give the creditors information on you are not non-public non-public companies, okay? Non-public. Sorry, I'm going off the map here a little bit. Non-profit is what I was trying to say. They're not non-profit companies. They are for-profit companies. They sell our information each and every day. That's how they make money. And when your scores are lower, they make more money, and I'll explain that in a minute. But these three credit bureaus, Experian, Equifax, and TransUnion, okay, they are not government agencies. They're not there to help you, even though it might sound like it or seem like it, or if you've ever gotten a letter from them saying, oh, hey, if you have a discrepancy, hey, no problem, just write us. We'll take care of it. We'll check into it for you. This is what we'll do, on and on and on. But you got to be so careful because they, like I said, are a for-profit company. They're there to make money. That's what they're there for. The FICO score, where that came from, FICO, the most common score that's kind of out there, is the Fair Isaac company. That's how it was started, and so on. The scoring, it ranges anywhere from 300 to 850. I've never seen a 300 score. That'd be pretty bad if it was. Usually I've seen like maybe in the mid fours or something like that, and I've seen some scores in around the 800. Most people bounce back between 5 and 700 as far as a score. And again, that score is derived from your credit history, good and bad. There's a number of other things, factors, and hopefully your listeners got a pen out there, or they can replay this again, and I'll try and go slowly because there's a lot of information here. But your score is made up of the type of credit you're using. One of the types that's really important is credit cards, revolving credit, okay? You need to have credit cards. I know it's kind of like an unnecessary evil, and again, I'm just telling you the rules. Now, this is if you want to have a good credit score. If you don't care about your credit score, cut up your cards, pay cash for everything, live like that, be able to buy your house cash or do something. But when it comes time to applying for credit, you're going to have that credit score. So some of the things you're going to want to know is credit cards. It makes up 35% of your score. So that's huge. How you use it is really important too. You have to use it. I've had clients that go, yeah, I've got a credit card, but I haven't used it for about 6 months. I paid it off. I bought some furniture once, paid it off. It's sitting in the drawer 6 months, a year ago. I'll pull their credit report, and they don't even have a credit score. It'll just be a line, like blank for all three scores.
Wow.
You have to use credit. So even if you've had credit in the past, if you have no credit today, you're not using credit, if it's within 6 months, you won't have a score. Past 6 months, you will not even have a score possibly. Or your score could be lower because you're not using credit. So it's kind of like going, if you don't go to school, you're going to get an F, right? You don't show up to class, you're going to get an F on your report card, right? You're going to get a 20-30% on your grade because you didn't show up. Maybe you showed up a couple of days now and then. So you have to use the credit. I tell people use it at least once a month, every couple of months. Never have more than about 3 to 5 credit cards. And the other magic number is you want to keep them no more than about 25% of their limit, meaning that if you've got a credit card with a $1,000 limit, you never want to charge over about $250 in any given month to be able to keep that score as high as possible. If you do that, and you max out every couple months or something like that, it doesn't matter. But I'm just saying, whenever you go to apply for credit, the way to have the best score going into that application is to make sure that thing is paid down to that 25%. The other thing that's important in your credit is history. How long have the accounts been established? So here's a frenzy that a lot of us went into a few years back. I don't know if you remember this, but we used to get those letters in the mail from other credit card companies or some that we have, and they'd have the 0% balance transfer offers. I don't know if you remember those. And it was back in like 07, 04 to 07. We used to get a lot of those. And what it was they were saying, hey, you can transfer your balance over to us at 0%. So people, what they do is they would go, and again, here's how you can look at this. I'm just going to say this kind of pretty clearly, hopefully here. Whatever you do financially usually is not the best thing for your credit. whatever you do on your credit is usually not the best thing for you financially.
Wow.
So you're kind of a catch-22 between a rock and a hard place here, in that, the Dave Ramseys and the Susie Ormans and, what you should do with your finances. I agree to all that stuff. Financially, if you're trying to get ahead and trying to do this and not waste a lot of money on interest charges and so on and so forth. And I'm going to teach people a way. You can have good credit without it even costing you money. Matter of fact, my wife just got a check in the mail for $5,000 back from her Bank of America Visa card. Now, when was the last time a credit card company actually wrote you a check instead of you writing them a check?
Wow.
So there are ways to actually use credit to your advantage and make money from the credit card companies and not have to actually pay out any money. So I still suggest
if I could just interject real quick, why do Dave Ramsey and Susie Orman, they always glorify to the world, especially on their shows, to cut up your credit cards? Why is that?
Well, I mean, again, they're coming at an angle. They're trying to help the consumers from a point of view is that people are dying in debt. And when I say dying, some of these people are literally committing suicide over their debt. I don't know if you've ever heard about that in the news. People shooting their families, shooting themselves. And
I hear that a lot.
Just in Austin here a few years ago, a guy flew his little Cessna, four-seater airplane into the IRS building. Burnt down his house because they had a tax lien on his house, and flew his plane into killed himself, and I think one guy was killed in the office. Thank God, a lot of other people weren't killed. But money can drive people to do some crazy things, and the stress that's involved, and so on and so forth. So, I understand it from the point of view of get out of debt, people. Don't be in debt. Don't go out and buy things you cannot afford. Don't overextend yourself. Even when we invest in, we'll talk about that a little later in the show. If you're heavily invested in real estate or whatever it might be that you buy and sell antiques or paintings, or you're money trading or stocks or whatever, you still have to know what risks you're taking and calculate those risks to say, hey, if I happen to lose on this, well, I can still get up and keep going. But when people are taking cash advances on their credit card to go invest in something and then lose that money, and now the credit card $20,000, that was a bad decision, okay? You can take those risks. You do whatever you want. So I think that's more so where they're coming from. Cut up your credit card. Cutting up your credit cards is just dumb, period. That doesn't make sense because, Dave, Susie, how are you going to go buy a house? How are you going to go get a car? How are you going to do this? You have to. Nowadays, if you don't even have a credit card, when was the last time you rented a car? Okay, they ask you for a credit card, and if you don't have a credit, if you pull out something that looks like it's your debit card, but credit or debit. Well, if you pull out a debit card or check card or whatever you want to call it, it's not an actual credit card. The car rental agencies will take approximately $250 right out of your bank account, right on the spot. If you have a credit card, they just put an authorization hold on it, and that's it. It's not costing anything. But they will actually take money out of your bank account, and then even when you bring back the car the next day, I think it takes like a couple, 3 days for that money to go back into your bank account. So you're out a couple $100. So, you have to, have a credit card. And again, I'm not saying I agree with everything I'm telling you. I'm just here telling you what the rules are, how to play this game, but work the system to your advantage.
So basically, people have to learn how to leverage credit to their advantage.
Yeah. For instance, I had a card, same thing. And the reason why I was telling you about my wife got a $5,000 check is because she has it's called I don't even remember what it's called, some kind of world point system or something. I used to have a Citibank dividend card, and there's many cards out there like this, and of course they only give it to people with good credit usually nowadays. But it's a dividend card, so they'll give you, my card started at 1%, then it went to 2%, and then it fluctuated between different types of stores or gas or groceries or whatever you're doing. But I was getting up to 6% cash back.
Wow.
And I could either use it towards paying my credit card off at the end of the month or at the end of the year. So what I would do is I would just send it to my wife. The reason why she got a check for $5,000 is because she uses it she uses it for her business. I was using mine for my business purchases. If I buy a stick of gum, I can't buy a stick of gum. I guess you buy a pack of gum. But, if it was $1 or, if they would take a credit card, man, I was using it.
Wow.
but I would pay it off every month, so it didn't cost me anything to use the card. But I was accumulating either points, like some people, get the airline miles if they do a lot of flying and they fly for free, or they get holidays for free, or they get those catalogs out and get merchandise for their points. But myself, I was making at least a couple, $3,000 a year. Just on the times I was using my card, all the cash back, that 1 to 6% I was redeeming, and then I would go on a vacation every year. Go, okay, got a paid vacation this year, So there's ways you can use it. There's other things you can do. I mean, I've had people take cash advances, $20,000, $30,000 off a credit card, invest in a real estate transaction deal I was doing, and returned their money back, and made 50% or 25% on their money. If you want to take that risk, but be prepared that if this deal goes south on you, okay, where are you going to get the $25,000 to pay the credit card company back?
You are experiencing a life-changing, powerful interview, and you are hearing it first from Arthur Robinson Jr.'s PowerfulInterviews.com.
Well, expand on cash advances. Explain that to people.
Well, I mean, what it is you're saying, or
yes, what it is.
Okay. I mean, it's just if you've got $10,000 room on your card and you've been buying groceries and stuff, and your balance is $2,600, you've got, what's that? You got $7,400 left over. Okay, you could take that as a cash advance. Now the interest rate is higher on it. Okay, and it actually starts immediately. You don't get like the 30-day grace or 20-day grace to pay it back without interest. It starts immediately on cash advances. To take that cash out, use it for whatever you're using it for. Investing, hopefully, unless you're paying a bill or something, but and then pay it back in a timely fashion. But the interest rate usually on stuff like that is pretty high. So, I wouldn't recommend it as a loan, as per se, like your first choice of a loan. If you've got, home equity loans are obviously going to be a lower interest rate if you can do that. So cash advance is not something that I would, just really recommend. But it's just a way that you can leverage your credit as well too, to do things. You can use. There was the like I said, when they used to have or they'd give you the checks against your card. And they would send these checks out to you and say, hey, use this checks, 0% interest for 6 months. Now, something like that's pretty good, because now you can write a $7,400 check out of that $10,000 and then go and invest that, and you've got 6 months to pay it back at 0% interest. The only other thing, though, so here's now we have to talk about, now how does this affect my credit, kind of getting back to credit here for a second. Now you've maxed out your card. You had $10,000 limit. You max it out. Your score might drop 50 or 100 points. So, again, you're between that rock and a hard place where if you take this money out, then you go to the bank to go do this deal, they pull your credit and see your score's dropped 100 points. They go, oh, I'm sorry, you don't qualify anymore. So you just shot yourself in the foot. So, the whole factor, like I said, the history, the length of time the account's been established, you want to have those cards more than about 4 years, using the credit on a regular basis, hopefully not going over 25% of the limit. Which is kind of hard to do nowadays too, because the banks are also lowering, the credit card companies are lowering your limits, because of so many people, they get laid off out there. They take a quick cash advance to survive for the next 6 months, and then maybe declare bankruptcy and not pay their money back. Now, I don't feel sorry for the banks, because they're the ones that got us in this predicament in the first place in this economy right now. Doing all the subprime loans and putting them as A paper and selling them to Japan on the stock market. I mean, there's just a lot of politics and corruption behind all this stuff too that's gone on over the years, and it's gotten out of hand. So I'm kind of a survivalist. I'm kind of in survival mode. It's all about me. Now I'm helping other people. I'm not stepping on the little guy. But what I'm saying is I'm not out there to help the big corporations anymore. They're flying in their private jets, still making their $1 million a year as a CEO. Meanwhile, their company, their bank, oh, well, we got all these bad debts. We need some money. Can we, they got their hand out. It's like a beggar on the street. Can you imagine seeing a CEO making $1 million a year or $10 million a year, whatever these guys are making, out on the street in his three-piece suit with his hand out going, hey, can you spare some change? Or, actually, can you spare about $20 billion? I mean, it's ridiculous.
Well, actually, the bailouts are basically for the rich, quantitative easing.
Oh, of course. Yeah, it didn't help the little guys. It's hurt us more than anything. So all the middle class out there and lower class is definitely hurt from what's happened on the bailout situation. But we won't go down that bunny trail because we'll start getting on a soapbox and preaching about that one. But it's just that I don't feel sorry for the banks anymore. So if you got listeners out there, if you guys are in debt, please talk to me before just paying off your debt or trying to come up with some kind of payment plan. Because there's another thing I want to touch base on too. I'm sure you might ask me this later on, but the statute of limitations on debt collection. Now, I'm not telling people quit paying your debts. Like just, you ran out and bought a new person a pair of shoes, or you went out and went to Home Depot and, spent a bunch of money and or bought a new car, and now you say, I just don't feel like paying for it. That's kind of like the government and the banks are doing. But, don't join them. Don't be like that. But if you've got a bunch of debts and maybe you got laid off or your income, your investor, your commissions, and it's gone down over the years, and you're just barely got your nose above water, or maybe you're underwater now, and you're thinking, how am I ever going to get out? Now, there's two ways. Some people just stop paying their debts and, deal with it as it comes. There's another thing is called bankruptcy, obviously. And please also talk to me before you declare bankruptcy, because sometimes I've saved a lot of people some money and the hassle of having to go through bankruptcy. There's actually some different ways you can go without doing bankruptcy. Save yourself $1,500 or a couple grand. Now, if you talk to a bankruptcy attorney, he'll say, oh, yeah, that's the way to go. Well, that's what they do for a living. They want people to declare bankruptcy, obviously. But there's a couple of different ways out of that as well, too. So the statute of limitations on debt collection, that talks about if you have debts in collection, they're coming after you or writing you letters and saying you got to pay this and this. There's what's called the statute on limitations that they have. Most states it's 4 years. It's between 3 to 6 years, but most states are about 4 years. Meaning, if you do not pay that debt within 4 years and they don't take you to court, now I shouldn't say pay it because you don't make payments nothing for 4 years because it always goes from your last payment. Okay, so if the collection companies are calling and then saying, well, hey, can you just pay us like $50 this month? I promise we won't call you for 6 months or something. Don't do it, okay? Because what you just did is just reset the statute of limitations another 4 years. And they have that time frame to actually go to court, file a grievance, take you to court, and if they win, to get a judgment. Now you're going to owe that for the rest of your life. If they don't get a judgment against you within the 4-year time period, they cannot, there's no way for them to collect.
Wow.
Yeah, after the 4 years, if there's no judgment, there's no way for them to collect. So I just a lot of, from my school of hard knocks, like, I'm not one of these college degrees. I was a high school dropout. I was, I don't know, too smart for my own good or whatever it was, but I was very entrepreneurial. Always, my mom laughs when I was like, I don't know, I was like 4 years old maybe. I went to the next door neighbor's crab apple tree, and was stealing apples off his tree, put in my little red wagon, and I was going door to door selling them for 10 cents a piece. I was always trying to figure a way to make a buck. So, I've learned a lot of this stuff along the way, a lot of tidbits, a lot of little pieces of knowledge and wisdom that they don't teach this stuff out there. You can't get this information. I've talked to people with doctorate degrees that have no clue. I mean, some of my worst clients are doctors and lawyers. That just, they work too hard. Okay, so they're good at what they do, but they have no idea when it comes to finances. Some of these guys, and so they just, they have to call me and go, Anthony, here, you need to help me. I don't know what I'm doing. I'm doing it all wrong, I guess. And sure enough, they are. So it's not just for the small guy who's making $30,000 a year. I mean, some of my clients I've got, and some people that don't have derogatories. They don't have any, so if you're listening and you say, well, I don't have any derogatories, I don't have any bad remarks on my credit, so, I really don't need your services. I don't think I need to listen to what you're talking about. I seem to be doing okay. That's not necessarily true.
Now, I have a two-part question for you, Anthony.
Okay.
How can people get a high credit score in the 800s? And is this a fact that your real score could be more than 100 points lower?
Oh, okay. You're talking about 100 points lower between the different bureaus possibly?
Correct.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, here's the ideal thing. I mean, what I want to do is I'll obviously look at everybody's personal situation differently. see where they're at. And that's why everybody scores differently. There'll be, how come, I have, a 700 score and my wife has an 800 score? It's going to make a lot of differences. There's so many variables on how they score it, on what's on the credit. But making a long story short, the differences between the scores between the bureaus is depending on, if you look at a credit report, not all the creditors have to report to all three of the bureaus. Okay? So, in other words, like if a creditor can, let's say, most like a bank. I'm just trying to think of which one I could use as an example. Like a mortgage. Mortgages will usually, same with like when you apply for credit, they will usually run all three credit reports. Okay? And then when they report it, they will usually report to all three bureaus. But if you go, let's say, get a car loan, most car places, or even some of the banks that do the funding, will only pull one or maybe two credit bureaus.
Wow.
And then when they report the actual loan afterwards, sometimes they only report to one or two. It costs them money. Remember when I was talking about the bureaus being a for-profit company? Okay, so it costs them money to pull your credit. It costs money for them to report as well, too. So sometimes I've had cases where something's not even reporting to the bureaus. You have to call them and say, hey, I need you to report this to my credit bureau. Because it's positive credit you want it. Obviously, if it was negative credit, you hope they're not reporting it, or that they're not reporting it to, all three. Maybe it's only two or only one of the bureaus. But I've looked at reports, and okay, here's the account, Bank of America Mortgage, reporting to all three. Then below that, I've got GMAC, Auto Loan, reporting to two bureaus. Then I got another one that's a collection for medical. It's only reporting to one bureau. So that's why your score will fluctuate from bureau to bureau, because they may not all have the same information. Does that make sense?
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah. So when somebody says, what's your credit score, usually what they're trying to figure out is what's the, and it's not the average, it's your middle score. And again, this is, I'm talking a lot of language from the creditor's side, and for the consumer to understand this, is like I said, this has been, 20 years for me of knowledge and figuring this stuff out. So it's hard to explain in an hour over the show. But if your scores, let's say 7, 10, 7, 12, and 800, you can't add those three scores together. Matter of fact, let's just use it as an example. So if I go 700 plus 712 plus 800, and I divide that by 3, that comes up to 737. That's not your middle score or your average. I mean, that's the average of the three scores, but that's not what the banks will use. They use your middle score of the three. So if it's 700, 712, and 800, your middle score will be 712. So when you go to apply for that bank loan, that mortgage, depending on their program, and when I used to be a mortgage broker, the magic number was 720, sometimes 730. So that 712, even though you had an 800 score, you couldn't use 737. You had to use 712. So you might not make that loan program. Okay, so that's why it's so crucial to obviously have, good credit and have it showing with all three bureaus to help offset any negative credit, to keep your score up as high as possible. And it's also good to, use my services, for instance, to get those derogatories removed so that your score can go up. But again, it's not just enough to get the derogatories removed. You also have to have the positive credit there as well, too. So it's kind of like that scale of justice. When you take something off one side, the other side goes up or down.
So you got to have a good credit score to qualify for a specific loan product.
Well, and again, if we're using score nowadays, it's for everything across the board. But yes, on a loan product, if you go talk to any finance manager at a car lot, you talk to any mortgage broker, if they know what they're doing, they've been doing this for years like me, they're an expert at it, you're going to come in, first thing they're going to pull your credit report. They want to see where you're at so they know which bank to go to, because they know what banks have what programs. We go to this bank because they'll do 700, but this bank wants a 720, so with your 712, we can't go there. Okay, now that's just on your score. We're also not talking about a lot of stuff like your debt-to-income ratio, how much money you make. Because some people go, man, I got a 740, 750 credit score. I'm going to go buy a house tomorrow. First-time buyer. I mean, I've dealt with a lot of my clients like that too. They get all excited. Oh, interest rates are an all-time low. House prices have dropped, man. There's such great deals out there. We're going to go buy a house tomorrow. I go, yeah, but aren't you living paycheck to paycheck? Yeah. Well, how do you think you're going to get that bank loan? When you go in there and you got a 750 credit score, but you're making $30,000 a year, and you're spending 32, and your credit cards are, your credit cards won't be maxed because you won't have a 750 score. But what I mean is that when they figure out what your income and your debts are, you can't afford that loan, even if with the 750 score.
Wow.
Okay, same with a car loan. It's the same thing. They'll bring up the debt-to-income ratio there as well, too. So it's not just your score driven, but it's your money. But let's talk about the score. I'm just going to go in a little different direction. You can cut me off if you need to. Is for a job, which is so important today with a lot of folks looking for work, or I have a bunch of my clients, too, are in the military. Did you know this? I bet you didn't know this. They will run your credit. Well, like I said, employers will run your credit all the time to get the job, to keep the job. But also in the military, now to have a security clearance, you have to have good credit.
Now, what is a security clearance?
Anything, to get on a certain base or, to get into behind closed doors. So whatever they do within the military, whether it's the Army, the Navy, the Marines, or Air Force, whatever mission or whatever, their job description they might have to look at some classified information. Well, they have to have a security clearance to allow them to do that. I mean, so many spies going on and, different rankings and so on and things that are going on with this. They need a security clearance to be able to do their job. And one of the things is I've had people call me up from the military and go, hey, I just, or they're trying to get a promotion, but they go, hey, my security clearance is up for renewal, and they just pull my credit for whatever reason. I don't understand why, and they won't give me my security clearance. So now they're going to get demoted, and they won't be able to do that particular job that they were going to get a promotion for, too. Auto insurance rates, like I said, you could save maybe $50 a month, maybe $10 a month, maybe $100, depending on what you're paying on your auto insurance rates based off your credit score.
To anyone listening on this call, I highly recommend, if you haven't already done so, go and get your pen and your pad right now and write down these powerful notes and let this information absorb in your brain. I have the best on the best to come on my show, and Anthony Gaalaas is by far the best on the planet in regards to teaching people on how to increase their credit scores. You heard the concept that his wife received a check from the credit card company. I never heard of that concept ever. And I don't even know a powerful leader that actually teaches that concept. And you heard it first on the PowerfulInterviews.com show with Anthony Gaalaas. And I highly recommend get involved with the programs that Anthony has. And Anthony, can you tell the people exactly where they can find you in regards to your website?
Yeah, real simple. It's AnthonyCreditExpert.com. So the three letters there to remember is ACE, ACE. AnthonyCreditExpert.com. Go to my website, read some information that's on there, watch some videos. I also have a free consultation you can have with me, no cost, no obligation whatsoever. You just fill out a form on there, tell me what time you want me to give you a call at, what state you're in, so I'm not calling you at midnight or 6 o'clock in the morning. And we can have a free consultation together, and I will look at your personal situation and give you some advice either way. Whether you need my program to help you with those derogatories, or maybe you don't have any derogatories, but you just need to know what to do with the credits you have, how to maintain, how to improve what you have. So, I've got a little bit of something for everybody.
You are experiencing a life-changing, powerful interview, and you are hearing it first from Arthur Robinson Jr.'s PowerfulInterviews.com.
Now, explain to the listeners, Anthony, in layman's terms, what credit inquiries are and why do they show up on your credit score, and how can business owners avoid getting too many of them?
Okay. Yeah, good point there to bring up. There's a difference between the inquiries, okay? There's inquiries, which, again, I'm going to say a lot of terminology that's just known in the industry. They'll call it a hard pull or a soft pull. You might have heard that. What they're saying is that when you apply for credit, that's what's called a hard pull. Because some people say, don't apply for too much credit or don't let anybody pull your credit report because your score is going to drop 50 points. Well, that's not necessarily true. I mean, if you were to go in 100 car dealerships, yeah, your score would probably drop, 20, 30 points. But, and there's a way around that too, and I'll teach people how to shop for a loan without having somebody even pull your credit report. You can do it yourself once, and we'll talk about that and how you can shop for a loan without getting those hard pulls. But so if you apply for credit and they run your credit report, that's what we call a hard pull. That can affect your score, or will show up as your inquiries, in other words. The other one, the soft pull, or what they look at, is creditors, and especially the credit card companies, and this has probably happened to a lot of your listeners. The banks, any of your creditors can pull or look at your credit from time to time. Usually once a month they'll even do it. On an ongoing basis, and you might look at those inquiries on you and you go, man, I got, there's like 100 inquiries on here in the last 6 months. But those soft pulls aren't affecting your credit score at all. Okay, so don't be alarmed if you see that. But what they do is they have the right to look at your credit to see what's going on. And here's what they're doing, is they're looking to see how what you're doing with the rest of your creditors, okay? So if you got other credit cards or you got car loans or something like that, if they think that you're, overextended or they see that you've gone late, like for instance, and I'm just pulling names out. I'm not picking on any banks or anything like that. Or let's not use names. Let's use Bank A and Bank B, so we're not mentioning any names because this isn't, I'm not trying to pick on any bank in particular. But if you've got a credit card with Bank A and you've been on time, no problems whatsoever, matter of fact, you're at 25% of your limit. But Bank B over here, whether you forgot to make the payment, whether you just couldn't afford it, whatever the case. Let's say you went 30 days late. Okay? Now, Bank B will probably raise your interest rate, maybe not the first go-around. But what can happen is Bank A, when they're doing their monthly inquiry on your credit report, they go, hey, look at this. Joe was late last month with Bank B over here, and he's now got a 30-day late. We're going to lower his limit on our credit card, and or we're going to raise his interest rate. So now you get that statement next month, and you see your interest rate went from 12.9% to 19.9% or 29% or something ridiculous. Okay? And you call them up and you go, or they lowered your limit. You go, hey, what are you doing? Well, and they'll send you a letter back and they'll tell you, well, according to your credit report, this is what we've decided to do. And they have the right to do that. Okay? Again, in this day and age, they don't know what everybody's going through, and they don't want to take a chance on losing any more money. I know the interest rate thing is kind of ridiculous. Like, hey, why are you looking at, I've been dealing, let's say you've had Bank A's credit card for 20 years or 30 years. Most people probably haven't, but I'm just going to use that. Say you've been a loyal customer. You've been with them. Matter of fact, you've even paid before the statement date was due. You've just been a great customer of theirs. Bank B, you just got this card 6 months ago. Okay? So why isn't Bank A looking at me and saying, hey, this guy's been a loyal customer. Yeah, so he messed up over there with that company, but he hasn't messed up with us, so we're going to keep him at that. Matter of fact, we're going to lower his interest rate to 9.9. Matter of fact, we're even going to up his limit. He's been such a great customer. They don't do it that way.
Now, let's talk about interest rates. For the listeners that don't know, can you explain to them, Anthony, so they fully understand in depth what exactly is interest rates?
Okay. Well, I mean, the interest rates, are somewhat regulated by, the government again, as far as, what's the, I think Obama, passed something or whatever it was, showing a maximum interest rate. I think it can be about 30% though, which is pretty ridiculous. But I don't want people to get too hung up on interest rates, okay? Even when, for instance, when I got folks that don't have any credit or they're rebuilding their credit, and I go, okay, well, here's what you need to do. We need to apply for a credit card. Or some people have even canceled their credit card because the interest rate went up. That's the worst thing you can do. We need that credit history, so don't cancel those cards. The interest rate, if you're paying off your card every month, let me ask you that, Arthur. You've got a balance this month of $10,000 on your credit card, and like you started the month out at zero, you charge up $10,000, your statement comes in, you pay it off. If your interest rate is 1%, how much interest are you paying?
Basically zero.
Zero, exactly.
That's right.
Okay, you started out this month at zero. You charge up $10,000. The statement comes in. You pay it off in full. The interest rate on that card is 29.9%. How much interest did you pay that month?
Oh, wow. You paid a lot more.
No.
Oh,
No,
it's still nothing.
Same scenario. You paid it off. Zero. Right?
That's right.
So if now, and this is where the Dave Ramsey and the courses and all this kind of thing, where I agree with them, is pay off your debts. Don't max your card out and not pay it off, or pay the minimum payment at 9%, 29%, 19%. Don't waste that money. Don't throw it away. That's your hard-earned money. So if you're going to use credit, yeah, you got credit for 30 days, but pay it off. So don't get so when people, even when I tell people apply for a card and they go, well, with my bad credit, I tried to apply for a card, but the card they wanted to give me had a 29% interest rate or had a 19.9% interest rate. Who cares? So what? I don't care if it's 300%. I'm not telling you to pay any interest on it. I'm telling you need to have a credit card, use it wisely, don't charge more than you can afford, and pay it off every month. So now you're still taking advantage. You're getting that check in the mail for $5,000 because you're using the money, and they're going to send it to you if you got a dividend card, right?
That's right.
Pay it off every month, no interest, so it doesn't cost. And I always tell it, whenever I do seminars, I tell folks, hey, how many people here in the room have a card that and when the bill comes in, sometimes there's some interest on it, you got to pay the bank's money. They're like, oh, yeah, me. How would you like to have a card that every month they send you money back? I said, oh, well, yeah, of course, me. And that's where this comes into play on the whole dividend card, but you can't get that until you have the good credit. But the interest rate, don't get hung up on it, unless you're making your minimum monthly payments. And again, I'm not speaking to the people that just got laid off their job and, they don't have the funds. They have no choice but to make the minimum monthly payment. And I don't think it's fair that these banks kick you when you're down, They take your interest rate from 9.9 or 12.9 or 15.9 and they send it right up to 29% because, you weren't able to make your payment one month. Well, yeah, I just got laid off my job.
Well, do banks do a lot of predatory lending in regards to giving people credit cards, but they basically want you to get in debt so they can make more money off of the consumer?
Well, yeah, of course. I mean, how do you think they're paying their debts? It's like they're just jacking up their price of you using the card. Because they know most people will make minimum monthly payments. What happens at Christmas time? What does everybody do? They can't afford to buy presents for everybody. But what do? They get their credit card out and they go buy presents for everybody, and they take the next 6 months or a year to pay it off. And then next Christmas they're back in the same boat again. Okay, so the credit card companies are relying on you doing that. That's how they're making money. They make money off the merchants, but what do they make off a merchant? 1% to 3%. Okay, so the majority of their money is obviously coming from interest. But I don't play that game. I don't get involved in that game, see? And my recommendation, even when people are applying for credit too, like for instance, a credit card company, the bank that I refer a lot of people to, I don't get a kickback from this bank or anything for doing that, but they specialize in helping people rebuild their credit. Their credit limit right out of the gate is only $300. So we're not talking about a huge amount. We're not talking about somebody getting into debt in trouble. Like if you got a $10,000 or $20,000 limit and you don't want that because you think you can't control it, call the bank and tell them to lower it. Lower it down to $500 if you have to. If you're that Dave Ramsey, Susie Orman case, most of the people I'm dealing with are entrepreneurs and using credit to make money. But if you can't control your habits, I'm not saying quit, but lower it. Have a $300. Here's another trick question I got for you. Let's say you have a credit card and you have a $1,000 limit on that. Or let's use the $300. You have a $300 limit on your card, okay? And you owe $200 on that card. And then I have a credit card with a $30,000 limit, and I owe $10,000 on that card. Okay, who's in worse or better shape? Now that's a trick question. I'll tell you why. Because I didn't ask you, and this is what you would have to ask me if you knew this. You'd have to say, well, in better shape financially or better shape on my credit score. Okay, because they're both the opposite. Everything again you do financially is either going to make or break your credit, and everything you do in your credit is going to make or break your finances. So if I asked you, who's in worse shape financially? Well, I am. I owe $10,000. I'm in more debt. Let's say we make the same amount of money. I'm not saying I make $1 million a year and I can afford 10 grand. But let's say we make the same amount of money. Who's in worse shape financially? I am. I'm $10,000 in debt. You're only $800 in debt.
Right.
Okay? But then you put that, if I say, well, who's got a better credit score? I do. I only owe $10,000 on $30,000. That's 33% roughly, right? Okay, so my score is going to be judged off that 33% versus you are $800 on 1,000. You're at 80% maxed out. Your score is going to be lower than mine possibly, just based on that. Not counting whatever else is on your credit report. Okay, but just if that was the only thing we're dealing with. So that's why I said it was a trick question. So what you do financially, yeah, you might be benefiting financially. For instance, here's another one. This happens a lot. People will go out and go to, Best Buy or, whatever, some electronics store, or they'll go to a furniture store or whatever. They need some new furniture. They need a new big screen TV for the Super Bowl game, whatever it is. You walk in the door, you find what you want, and the sales guy, and they got a big sale going on, they go, hey, we have this 0% interest for 6 months or a year or whatever. So you think, hey, why should I go out of pocket $5,000 when I can put it on, I can apply for their credit here. I'm going to get approved. I got great credit. And I'm going to get that big screen TV and then a couple of couches or whatever it is. And you go home and pull your credit report the next day and your score just dropped 100 points. Because what happens is they're going to give you, they usually will only approve you for whatever your total is going to be. So usually it's like you do the shopping first, and they go, okay, your bill's going to come to $5,000. Let's see if you can get approved for $5,000 of store credit here. So they come back and say, hey, congratulations, you're approved. So you're like, wow, I don't even have to make a payment. I don't even have any interest for the next 6 months or a year. So you go home, you pull up your credit report, like I said, next month, and you got a new trade line from whatever store, and it says $5,000 limit, $5,000 balance. And your score just went down 100 points.
Wow.
Because you have a new trade line and it's maxed out. So that was great for your pocketbook, wasn't it? You're not out $5,000 for the whole next year. So from an investor point, it's like now I've got $5,000. I can go buy some gold or some silver or do this or do that. Okay, that's wonderful. Or go do some real estate. But I mean, if you're on your way to the bank the next day to go, and this has happened to me. The same scenario has happened to me with a couple of people. I had one client, we were doing a mortgage loan for them, and at the beginning when we pulled their credit to do the loan, everything was great. So we start the process going. It usually takes about 30 days, 2 weeks to 30 days to close that loan. Well, before the bank will fund and release that money, they will pull your credit card again to see if anything has changed in the last 30 days. And if all of a sudden that little shopping spree you had popped up, I had one guy, a client in Hawaii, I call him up and I go, hey, your score just dropped 50 points. The bank's not going to approve this. What's going on? I go, did you just happen to go shopping? I know what's happening. I said, did you just happen to go shopping? He goes, yeah, I just bought some new furniture. Just put it all in store credit because it was a great offer. Well, yeah, that was great for you financially, but you just killed your loan deal. Another fellow did the same thing. I called him up and said, what happened? He goes, oh, I just bought a new truck. Well, we're right in the middle of doing your loan to get approved for this, to refinance your home, and now they're not going to do it. They're going to do it, but they're going to jack up your interest rate higher. So, those few hundreds or maybe a couple $1,000s you saved up front could cost you on a real estate deal, your home could cost you $100,000 in the long run.
So don't sabotage your own benefits in regards to your credit.
Right. You have to know, again, how to play the game, when to go out on the field, when to do this, what to do, how to do it. It's just like a coach with a playbook. The problem is there's not enough coaches out there that understand that. If you Google credit repair or, credit expert or something like that, you're going to get a bunch of them out there that claim to know what they're talking about. Okay.
But they don't know what they're talking about.
They don't. I've been around this game, like I said, for the last 20-some years. I've seen people come and go. I know what I'm talking about, and that's the big difference. That's what I really pride myself on, is that I'm not just there as here's the other thing I do is, I'm not some kid in a cubicle reading a script off a computer screen, and I'm not against those kids up there that got a job, that's great. They're not on the street selling drugs. They got a job, so that's good. The problem is the company hasn't trained them properly. They're not an expert. Okay, if you go off their script anywhere, they're lost and confused. You ask them something that's not in their script, they're not going to have an answer, and they don't even have an answer. They're just reading what the script is. If you ask them, well, what does this mean? Like you're asking me questions about these things. If you ask probably 99% of the people who answer the phones at these call centers, they won't have a clue what we're talking about.
Right. Actually, they're going to recommend you to an expert that they are familiar with, but they now know the experience themselves.
Right. So you got to be so careful about who you're signing on the dotted line with, and ask enough questions, get some feedback, and get a referrals type thing, and be very careful who you're dealing with out there, because there's no coaches out there that are doing what I do, and that is not just working on your derogatory credit, because this credit repair company, they're a dime a dozen. You can go out there and throw some money at them, they can write some letters, hopefully get some stuff deleted off your report. That's fine and dandy. That's one thing. But what I pride myself in and what I do is taking you personally, coaching you personally, and looking at your personal credit profile and telling you exactly and training you and helping you to understand. My goal is to make a bunch of experts out of people. I don't want to have to, I'm not saying I wouldn't do this. Somebody want to call me 10 years from now, 5 years from now, 20 years from now and ask me some questions. Hey, I'm there for you. But my whole goal is to teach you so that every time you're going out there and doing something financially or whatever you're doing on your credit, it's always going to be in your best interest. You're going to benefit the most because you're going to have the education, you're going to have the knowledge, you're going to have the power to make that right decision. And that is huge. That you can't even put a dollar figure on that.
Well, I agree with everything you just said right there, Anthony. You have to be educated about the credit industry in the whole. Now, I have a two-part question for you, Anthony. Now, let's say we have listeners on the call that are experiencing bad credit. How long does bad credit stay on your credit profile? And let's say we have people that are interested in getting credit cards. What is the best place to find credit cards when they need them?
Right. Okay. Well, how long does it stay on your report? Like I said at the beginning, it was 7 years on the trade lines, which means the actual account. If you go through a bankruptcy with those accounts, the bankruptcy itself will stay on your credit report for 10 years. Okay, so I just say 7 to 10 years. Now, sometimes the bureaus won't take it off, and you actually have to write them a letter and remind them and go, hello, it's 7 years, it's 7.5 years, it's still my report, take it off. But yes, the bad credit, the negative credit, even though it's been paid off, sometimes I'll pull people's file, and I go, oh yeah, you've got this collection here you had, and you got this late you had, and they're like, yeah, no, but I paid that off, I paid that off 2 years ago. Well, yeah, but all it did is it went from an unpaid collection to a paid collection, or you were late, now you're not late. But that derogatory remark stays up and shows up on your credit report for everyone to see for the next 7 years.
Yeah, is it good to get a letter from that credit card company stating that you paid off that debt so you can show an individual that's a mortgage broker or mortgage banker that you paid off the debt that comes up on your credit profile?
If it's not reporting that way, yeah. Usually they'll update it, and that's what I'm saying. It'll go from a unpaid, it'll just say, say paid off, settled for less, charged off, whatever it is, it's been taken care of. If it's not showing that and you have to prove that it's been taken care of, then yeah, you have to get a letter to show the mortgage company or something that's been taken care of. But that still doesn't help you in the long run, is what I'm saying. So you still need to get that derogatory removed. And let me just explain what I do to help people understand how in the world are you going to get a mortgage late removed. You go to my website again, anthonycreditexpert.com, and click on client results. You'll see how we've got this stuff. You'll see some things that have been removed: bankruptcies, tax liens, child support, mortgage lates, medical collections, auto repos, whatever, all kinds of stuff that can be deleted based on a mistake, okay? And let me explain in layman's terms so your clients, your listeners understand this. If you were on your way to work one day, you got a speeding ticket, you're guilty. But when the cop gave you the ticket and you drove off, you noticed that he forgot one number on the back of your driver's license number. Your plate numbers, one letter numbers backwards or something like that. They're in the wrong place. If you go to court and you show the judge that ticket, by law, you just got off on a technicality. They have to throw that ticket out. They can't charge you. Now, the cop knows you're guilty. The judge knows you're guilty. The prosecutor knows you're guilty. Everybody in the courtroom knows you're guilty. You know you're guilty, but you got off on a technicality. Now, use that same analogy, and that's what I do on people's credit reports. Okay? So the creditors, the collection company, the bankruptcy courts, whoever, however, that's reporting this information to the bureaus, okay, they're like the cop writing the ticket.